Hello and welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. I'm Katrina Collier. I am, of course, author of The Robot Proof Recruiter, which you've never seen, honestly, never. And I am a facilitator and a speaker. I'm, of course, joined by my gorgeous co-host, the talented talent acquisition professional, the one, the only, the amazing Glenn Martin.
Hola.
Hi, Glenn. And, of course, we wouldn't be here at all to have amazing guests like we do today if it wasn't for our fabulous sponsor, Enterprise Alumni. Oh, I'm always thrilled when you actually point them the right way. Thank you, Enterprise Alumni, for keeping us here for another week. And today we are super excited to be chatting to Felicity King, who actually has a very, very, very interesting background to share with us. But she's also going to help us to get our mojo back, which I can assure you I need. So I can't wait for this. In 45 minutes' time, I expect to be bouncing off the walls. No pressure.
Welcome to the show, Felicity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
We only booked you like 5 months ago.
I know. Well, it's really kind.
You've been very patient.
Well,
very patient.
It's really great to be here, especially on such a grim day. You've brightened it up already. I want to come and see that wallpaper for real, Mr. Martin. It's amazing.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. As I said, I'm not being funny. Seriously, we must be really amping up the sales of this thing for the online store. And it's just kind of like a plug almost every week. Maybe we should get them as a sponsor, Katrina. You know what I mean? As we're already sort of doing them a favour.
Some interior features. Yeah,
exactly. Before we get into getting our mojo back, let's find out a little bit about you, Felicity, because you weren't originally from a kind of recruitment background. You've kind of moved into recruitment. So give us a little bit of context around how you arrived where you are now. What was the journey?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think first of all, I need to tell you that I chose recruitment, which will probably make lots of people take a big sharp intake of breath, or think I'm incredibly weird.
You're the third. We've now had 3.
Yeah. So my background is in education. I was a secondary science school teacher for the best part of 20 years. And towards the end of that time, I'd moved into leadership training and training teachers, mainly around resilience, around sustaining themselves, and around avoiding those, big black spots of burnout. So my company was called Sustainable People, and was all around sustaining yourself, human sustainability. And then really just some family choices that my husband and I made. He had a global job, so he traveled Monday to Friday every week. We had a young family, and we decided that it was time to do something that we both really wanted to do, but that fitted around our family life. And we had one criteria, one value, whatever you want to call it, and that was that we picked our children up from school every day. It's as simple as that, and it still is. That's it. When clients that I meet and colleagues say, so what's the driving force and what's your vision for the company? And I always stop and say, it's to pick you and Sandy up from school every day, and the rest will fit around that. So we decided that. My business had grown. My husband was ready for a change. He didn't want to travel and be overseas all the time. He was in procurement and sustainability. So we decided to do something together. We looked for something that would combine our skills and mean that we could be surrounded by people, great people, and people that we could bring out the greatness in. And so a recruitment consultancy came up for sale through a friend of a friend. We thought about it long and hard, and really didn't need to think about it for too long. But we took over the business, Edwards and Pierce, in February of this year. And we met our gorgeous team.
What a time to take over a recruitment consultancy.
Yeah.
With what happened in March.
Yeah, we were with our gorgeous team, for 5 weeks before we went into lockdown. So it was that's
about the time we spoke initially, isn't it? When the poo hit the fan.
Yeah. It probably is when we were all rushing around trying to buy extra laptops and set everyone up to work from home in a company that hadn't facilitated that before. So it was a real baptism of fire. And my husband and I joked when we acquired the business that it was going to be an evolution, not a revolution, in the way that we kind of arrived. But my goodness, it's turned out to be more of the revolution.
Yeah, straight vertical.
Absolutely.
No gentle curve, just.
No, straight in.
Love that.
That leads quite beautifully, though, into, really, because actually February, March, recruiting when you've lost your mojo. Because I hear this a lot. So the people in my mastermind pod are talking about this a lot, you know, and a couple of people I'm mentoring it's lost their mojo. I was being honest and saying I'd lost mine last few weeks as well. So I felt it was quite a good topic to have on, and I'm actually going to ask anybody who's in the comments in the chat if you could add where your mojo's at as well. That's going to drive us
your mojo.
I love it. I know. I'd probably put mine at about a 6. I need a nap. Is that bad?
No.
I mean, can I ask probably an obvious but maybe a slightly dumb question? When we're talking about somebody's mojo, what are we talking about here? You know, how are we defining this?
I think that's a really good question, and everybody will interpret it differently, won't they? You'll have people that instantly think about energy and kind of that whether you're being the Tigger or the Eeyore. You'll have some people that will break it down, and it will be, am I physically awake or tired? You know, and also, am I emotionally awake or tired? So I think it's both, and for me, sustainability is broken up into 3 parts. It's to do with your heart, your head, and your hands. So it's whether you are feeling drained emotionally, spiritually, whatever word you want to choose. It's whether you can't think straight, you can't process information, and you can't kind of get to your day's work or your day's parenting or the combination of the two in the way that you would hope to, and you feel kind of less efficient and more kind of stumbly as you're going through it. But also physically, you physically the things you do with your hands. If your mojo or your energy levels are low, you take longer to do things. You find that you're unable to coordinate yourself in quite the same way. Maybe exercise is harder. So if you're used to something on a daily basis, you walk or you run or whatever it might be kind of like pulling teeth trying to do it. So for me, I think it's a combination of all 3, but most of us will just go for that top line energy level kind of onness. Are we on it or are we off it? And it's
definitely off it on all of them. Seriously, Lisa's added a thing in it. Hi guys, I think your mojo comes and goes depending on your own world. What's going on in the outside world as well.
Hello, Lisa. I know Lisa. Hello.
Yes, Lisa wrote a very lovely comment about you over on Facebook.
Oh,
that's
very
cool.
kind. I'm very kind.
What about for those individuals that interpret their mojo in a kind of mental health and well-being kind of perspective? How would you? Because that's part of what you do in terms of your kind of coaching, right? We were talking about this in the green room. So could you break that down a little bit for us? How would we interpret that, our mojo, in that context?
Well, I think the first thing is to be self-aware and to be. We talk about self-kindness and we talk about kind of understanding that we all have an up and down, and sometimes I just take away the word mental and talk about health, because we all have moment to moment mental health, really, depending on what the last thought was that went through our mind. For example, I looked out of the window this morning and thought, oh, it's raining, but somebody else may have looked out of the window and thought, brilliant, it's raining. It's watering the crops. My father's a farmer.
Yeah.
So he will have just sown all his crops, and actually a bit of rain at the moment is pretty good. So
pretty good. It's actually been really dry as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on kind of what you're planning, what you're thinking ahead to, where you're at, any kind of thought process or anything that comes into your consciousness is going to affect your mental health. So first of all, I think we should all cut ourselves some slack with mental health. Ours varies moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day, and it is just the way it is. But what we can do is become more aware of that and just notice, what is a thought, and the fact that it will be there 1 minute and gone the next. Or if we choose to put our attention on it, we'll make it bigger, and we'll make it bigger, and then it will stay with us for longer. And when you do that, your attention on your thoughts, of course, translates into physiological processes and changes in your body. And that will then give you a response. And I think we all know that we can think ourselves into poor mental health. We can linger on things, we can chew stuff over and really go back and revisit. And yet another day, something may come to us and we'll just kind of watch it go by, and it won't impact again. Yeah. And we all have that up and down. I do. I totally do.
Yeah.
I might be.
Do you think
Sorry, Katrina.
Some of it comes from like the comparison game. So, a lot of my clients are on LinkedIn, so I open up LinkedIn and I'll, if I'm having one of those days where I'm just, and you see someone's like absolutely raving on about everything that's great that's going on in their world. Do you think we start doing that can affect your mood?
Without doubt, I know I do. If I think back to my own experience, I used to be quite active on Twitter, and I have a lot of connections in the education world, and some great colleagues, and it's a really vibrant place. But when everything hit the fan, as you described, and I really had to stand back and take a long, hard look at what I could manage and cope with on on my plate on a day-to-day basis, and what my priorities were, Twitter went. Because I just didn't need that noise. I didn't need that opportunity to be feeling slightly under par, slightly suppressed, and then to be seeing, some top line kind of photos, data, information in my periphery that actually isn't relevant to me, but can trigger that self-comparison really quickly. Yes, I'm completely with you. For me, self-awareness is when you're starting to feel that way, when you're starting to be aware that you are in a completely normal, but slightly more vulnerable mindset. You don't need to be going to social media or things like that, because it's the first place that you'll, in your face.
That's when you want to go for the self-care.
Yeah.
Which I get completely, like utterly. I have no problems with self-care. I think it's really important. But that is guarantee where I will hear, but it's selfish. I can't do that. I can't. No. Everything else is more important. You must tackle that in the work you do.
All the time. And I know that too. I know that voice. Of course I do. But I've learned through practice and mastery, like in your mastermind group, Katrina, that that you have to travel through something uncomfortable for you to realize that it's actually normal. So I'm very passionate about teaching children this from an early age, that actually struggle is what we're wired for. We're not wired for easy. We've never been wired for the kind of smooth road. And we do need, I think, and I believe it is a human need. We do need to be exposed to these challenging times, and we've got everything inside us to deal with them if we just stop, pause, and allow them to happen. Because most of the feelings that we're talking about, most of this kind of cocktail of hormones and thought and neural processes lasts for such a short time. We're only talking maybe 90 seconds for those uncomfortable feelings to disappear. And then that builds resilience. It builds neuroplasticity and develops resilience over time. So there are really tricky times out there for everybody, but one of the fastest ways to build our resilience and go back to the resilience we had as a child is to just cut ourselves some slack and take some time to notice rather than judge.
Do you have any tips on how to do that? Like, just because, obviously I've got mine, but I would rather hear yours as a professional.
And I think
so many people think it's having a bubble bath, and it's like, could be
but
but
of course it is. That's a really nice way to end the day or maybe start the day. But let's face it, you might be in a car driving somewhere, or you might be about to walk into a meeting with a client, or you might be about to lead a team meeting of your own, and a bubble bath and scented candles are just not appropriate. I think one of the most easy tools to use is something you're already doing. So for me, it's breathing. And I've always been interested in why breathing in certain ways affects our physiology. So the most simple form of kind of reset breathing, when you are starting to feel slightly anxious, slightly agitated, you've got that uncomfortableness, you can't quite work out where it's coming from, but you're just slightly off kilter, the kind of the needles being tipped one way. Well, the main reason for that is that your brain is deprived of glucose, and there are two reasons why your brain's deprived of glucose. Usually you've been making lots of decisions, lots of choices. So for example, if you sit staring at your inbox first thing in the morning, you'll deplete your brain of glucose within about 11, 12 minutes. That's what the data's showing at the moment. Yeah. So if you start your day every day looking at your inbox, the first thing you do is you flip open your laptop wherever you are, which of course at home is so easy to do, isn't it?
I did it on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. You may be even doing it as you're putting the kettle on. It is absolutely the first thing you do. Well, I think a really good tip that I was given a few years ago, and it works an absolute treat, is never start your day with your inbox, because your inbox is the biggest sucker of your brain glucose, just because of all the choices that we're faced with when we open an inbox, all the decisions. So that's the first thing, kind of choice, because choice is part of change. And when you're looking at your inbox and thinking, there's an email there from Glenn, and there's one there from Felicity, what will they be? Do I need to open them? Will I need to reply? Have I got the information ready? You're already subconsciously affecting change on your body, and that depletes brain glucose really quickly. The other thing that depletes your brain glucose really quickly is the suppression of your emotions. Now, if we can break that down and make it sound less woo, because I know everybody thinks about emotions in different ways. I'm, really obviously comfortable with emotional intelligence and using the word, but really we're talking feelings. We're talking those funny sensations in your body. That kind of maybe slightly rising heat, rising blood pressure, a bit prickly. You might even feel a bit cold, or that sort of tenseness. It can be all sorts. It can be a dry throat. Well, every time we get one of those, that's really just our body signaling that something's happening in the environment. And, if we were the animal out in the savannah, we'd just run away. We'd exercise, we'd kind of burn it off and the cortisol levels would be down. But we don't. We kind of swallow it back. We suppress it. That's what humans have been, conditioned to do. And when you do that over time, it depletes your brain of glucose, and it does it really quickly. So that all that means is the thinking part of your brain, the subcortex, the kind of semi-modern part of your brain, can't allow you to think and process and make judgments and assimilate information very quickly. And so you snap at your partner, you're shouting at your kids, trying to get them ready for school.
Apparently, according to Debbie, I crave sugar all day.
Yeah.
Hey, Debbie.
Yeah, we've got a quick comment here from John. I had to throw that in. That seemed perfectly timed. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, I think John is related to what you're saying as well. Wired for the struggle. So that's where you were just talking about the flight or fright, weren't you? So if we are wired for the struggle, as Felicity says, how do we balance the fight or flight responses when the right thing might be to settle and watch and wait for a while?
That's a really good question. And I think there are two things there. There's the fight or flight response, which is there in our old, in the most ancient part of our brain. But it's actually in the kind of middle part of our brain as well. We think that our amygdala is kind of in that old reptilian brain, but it actually permeates into the middle, the second part of our brain as well, which is why there's such a tricky link between our modern thinking and our kind of advancement and our evolution and this reflex. So we can't just blame the fact that it switches on all the time automatically, because we can make it happen too. We can make it happen with the stress and strain. And the problem is that we can recover from fight or flight really quickly if we let it happen. But the fact is we don't. We try and fight it. We try and fight the fight or flight, and that's what depletes us. And then, of course, you know what it's like when you form a habit. When you start forming a habit, your brain wants to do it again and again, especially if it perceives it as a way of saving you, protecting you. So it will hardwire that habit really quickly. Yeah. So we've got that at play. But back to the glucose thing and your question about how do we reset this? A really effective way of doing it, which we could practice, we could have a go at now if you like.
Yes, let's do it. Are you ready, everyone?
Yeah. So you don't need anything
fancy. I felt the need to sit up.
Yeah, go for it. You don't need anything fancy, you just need yourself. And I might be doing this in the car, I might be doing it walking back from school, dropping the kids off, I might be doing it just before I'm about to meet a client or in a training session, whatever. But if you can just turn your breathing into something a little bit slower, and rather than just breathing deeply in and out, if you can put a pause in, so if you can hold your breath after the in-breath and then after the out-breath, what that does quite cunningly is switches a little switch in your brain. I call it the glucose button. It's the anterior cingulate cortex. And what that does is it sends...
glucose button is so much easier than what you just said.
That's all you need. It sends the glucose back into the thinking part of your brain, because what your brain will do whenever it's under pressure is put the glucose and the oxygen into the most precious part of your brain, that old reptilian part, and that controls your heartbeat and your breathing rate and the way and your brain function. It makes sense, doesn't it? If there's a stress, if there's an emergency, let's put all the reserves into the most precious and important bit. But of course, that means that our thinking brain and our kind of rational brain and the brain that says, hang on a minute, that's not a real threat, let's just work through this. That's all switched off if it hasn't got any power, any fuel. So if you do this breath, so it's an in breath, hold, an out breath and hold. And it helps sometimes if you visualize a square for the 4 parts to it. There's usually a window or a door in every place that you are. So something square or rectangular. So you could even, trace your eye line around those. So do the inhale, hold, exhale.
Ah, gotcha. Yep.
Hold. Inhale.
That's very cool.
Hold. Exhale. Hold. Now, if you do that 2 or 3 times, I don't know if you've noticed, but already your shoulders start to drop, your blood pressure is slowing down, your muscles are relaxing as the cortisol levels are falling, and most importantly, glucose is being spread throughout your brain, so you can think clearly. You've got that clarity, and you can also make a wise choice, make a wise well-being choice that isn't going to take you down the rabbit hole or a darker hole.
It's amazing we have it right there, don't we?
Yeah, we're doing it anyway.
I've done the one that helps you go to sleep as well, and I can't think what it is now. That you inhale for X, hold for X. Is it inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8, or something like that? I can never remember.
Yeah,
I've done that to help me go to sleep.
Yeah, that's really good.
Which is really cool. So there you go. We have solved Debbie's sugar cravings. You just need to breathe, honey. Breathe.
There's probably a few other factors.
I was just thinking,
hectic life.
While we were going through that, obviously we're impacted by our environment, right? Now, we were talking about, kind of recruitment and losing your mojo. Now, let's be fair, there's been a fair bit that's impacted the industry and all industries over the last 6 or 7 months. So would you perhaps acknowledge that some people maybe have a bit of an excuse or reason to not feel 100%? What would you perhaps what would you say to them? Because look, we're not here to kind of give people an excuse to feel down, but there's got to be that kind of acknowledgement, and certainly for the folks that have been kind of put on furlough and now they're perhaps coming back to their job, and the company's like, right, you're back, go for it, and they're like, I don't know if I'm ready to go for it.
Yeah. Because again, with the furlough, if you've been furloughed for a prolonged period of time without much contact and without, even being involved in any development, let's say, then you've got that sense of disconnect, haven't you? And we've created another pattern, another habit, which is of managing and being okay without the kind of commitments of work and without the buzz that we get from it, and that's like being at one side of a river, isn't it? You've got to find a way to get back over there in order to get back in the game as such, and it's not an easy quick solution, and everybody's scenarios are different. But what I would say is the most powerful ways I've found of reconnecting people with their mojo and their sense of purpose is to focus on that self-awareness. So is to start some really simple analysis of what your strengths are and to revisit them, and not just to kind of make a list of what are my top 3 strengths, but actually try and do something a bit deeper. Try and do something where you look at values and you look at words and you pick the ones that resonate with you most. I've got a tool I could share with anybody that wants it afterwards with pleasure. You pick those words, those characteristics that most describe you and most matter to you, and then you articulate them. So you say out loud, either on your own or with someone, with a friend or a loved one, you say out loud, this matters to me because, or I think this is me because, and you articulate it. And if we start by having a shared conversation about what our strengths are and what our lesser strengths are, because let's face it, we're all different, and some of us excel in certain areas.
Things we hate doing.
Yeah,
we're not good at it. We just don't want to do, and that's fine.
We're meant to be like that. We're meant to be like that. That's what makes us different. And we wouldn't have jobs as recruiters. We wouldn't have careers if we weren't dealing and working with, the privilege of different.
Like people.
Yeah, exactly. But also they're different. That's our job, isn't it? To line up, to get the holes and the pegs the right shape for each other. So I think that's a really important first step. But also, Glenn, I think empathetic conversations are really important. So when you are faced with those conversations with your clients, it's understanding that they are in the same boat. You might not be able to have conversations about roles and about opportunities at the moment because, let's face it, they're probably not in a position to be proactively recruiting. There might be some reactive recruitment, which again, not very long down the line might turn out to disappear, and then another plan will crop up. So I think those conversations that we have got to be what I call inside out conversations, rather than those really transactional ones. And when you have those empathetic conversations about what you're struggling with, when there actually isn't a job or a recruitment opportunity on the table, then you start building that human connection again. And I think that's absolutely vital. Anybody leading a team, it's vital.
Cool.
There's still that funny thing, you talk about values. So I've done work with Dr. John DeMartini, so like to work out what my values are, and it was actually quite historical to see like where they came from and why they are the way they are. And everything that I do that I succeed in is when I'm in those values. But there's sort of almost like a societal pressure to, well, you should be in this path, or you should do this and that. The whole "should" word that we all hate makes us like, meh. But it's funny because it certainly took me to my 40s to let go and go, no, you know what? I'm just going to do what I really love doing. And I still think there's a bit of resistance by society, but like pressure put on people to conform. If that makes sense.
I think you're right. And I think, again, that's slightly to do with what you surround yourself with and what you allow to come into your peripheral, let's say. I'm totally with you that age is a great warrior, isn't it? And
you look and go, what am I doing? I hate doing this.
And I would never in a million years, I would never, as a young woman, who was very fortunate to be given opportunities to learn and to, I would never in a million years have said that approaching 50, my main priority would be picking my children up from school. I'd almost be disappointed in my future self in saying that, but I'm not. I'm absolutely comfortable in it, because I think when you have gone through difficult times, or you've gone through big decisions in your personal life and in your in your work, in your relationships, in your family, and everything, that's where we learn, isn't it? And for me, that's what learning's about. It's back to this. It's back to this uncomfortable again. It is a bit uncomfortable getting up close and personal with your values, but that's where really good professional and personal development is key.
It's where you'll succeed. And I just feel like there's other people like trying to hold you back, and you have to learn. And that does go to Mojo, because if people are holding you back from doing what you really want to do, it will impact.
There's a really
bit bigger than.
There's a really lovely, and no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's a really lovely analogy to kind of values and the things that matter to you that I've kind of carried with me for a long time. And a child taught me this. I was doing a training session in a school a few years ago for some head teachers, and one of the children that I was talking to at lunchtime sort of said, "Oh, Miss, you mean like a torch?" And this just stuck with me. This little one said to me, "So your values are like the batteries in a torch, and when you've got them in the right way round, and you've got the torch put together in the right way, you've got a bright light. And if that's all working, if your values are all there, you're not missing a battery, so the light's not dim, the light's strong, whatever you're looking for in the dark or round a corner or in a bumpy place, you'll be able to see." And I just thought, oh my goodness, this is gold. And that is exactly right. There's a lot of darkness at the moment, isn't there? There are lots of bumps in the road. But if you are very secure in what matters to you most, and those don't have to be fancy things. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for them to be, something professional or something visionary, or that kind of thing. And I don't think the media helps with that either. I'm a great advocate for supporting everybody and promoting everybody to have opportunity. But sometimes I think we just need a bit of quiet and to focus on what our values are. And when you know them, they fit, and they will always. It might be tricky, but they will always be there to kind of bring you back to a yes or a no. And let's face it, the no's are more important than the yeses, aren't they?
It's funny you mentioned the media with I just stopped when Trump was elected. I stopped watching the news. Haven't missed a thing, because you hear it filters in what's really important and going on. But wow, the biggest change was actually not knowing what the weather was doing, which can be a shock when you go out for the dog walk. It's like, oh, the weather's dropped 10 degrees and it's raining. But other than that, and just to take all of that negativity out of my life. And actually, really interestingly, my ex-husband wasn't sleeping well. And I said to him, "Why don't you stop watching the news before you go to bed?" And he started sleeping better. It was extraordinary because I guess it's like you're saying as well, it's all going on in your head, watching all that, and I just don't trust it anymore either.
It's very repetitive as well, isn't it? The news, it's the story, then the story again, then the story again, and you become totally sidetracked to whether it's objective or not. It's just somebody's perspective, and it's kind of reinforced again and again, even within the same show, and that damages your brain's capacity to be useful for you.
Kendra's absolutely right. You cannot escape the news. Honestly, I knew about the fly in about 5 minutes, and I didn't even know there'd been a debate. And it was like within 5 minutes of opening Facebook this morning, I was like clued up what was going on. Yeah. Everyone knows about the fly on his head. Anyway, I don't know who he is, but excuse my ignorance to American politics, but I'd rather stay not watching the news.
I think just to provide a bit of context, Felicity, because you're giving out some really great advice here, and just for people watching and listening, you're actually, you're actually going through this with your business at the moment. So as we were discussing before the show, right? 6 weeks before the lockdown, you bought a business. You entered into, kind of moving things forward, and then suddenly
recruitment.
So how did you kind of navigate that initially? Because ultimately it's forced upon you. You just quite literally got in the door in terms of this new business. You've just started to meet like the employees and really start to build, or certainly outline to them the kind of vision that you're looking for, and then bang, lockdown comes in. Everybody's remote. How did you approach that? What were the first steps just to kind of address the lockdown piece and maybe kind of I guess try and continue to communicate in this kind of new format, new way?
Well,
are you trying to say how did she not go demented?
Well, I was struggling a little bit there.
I think she probably did.
A little bit with it.
Probably did go demented at some point. I think we all did. And
how did you not throw your toys out of the pram?
With the children at home and homeschooling and the whole thing. I've taught a lot of children, probably thousands over the years, but never my own, and it's a totally different thing, completely different thing. So we went into lockdown, and I think the first thing for us, like anybody else, was kind of the shock, and it was a bit of a delayed shock. It was a bit like having one of those concussions that comes on kind of the next day, that you're watching out for, because the immediacy of it was, working from home. Well, that sounds quite cool in itself, and the team that we inherited in our acquisition hadn't really ever worked from home apart from odd days and that kind of thing. So the first thing was logistics. It was equipping everybody with what they needed, which, my goodness, hats off to everybody. Our team are amazing. They were very flexible, very helpful, really supportive of each other. Because we're remote as well. We live a couple of hours away from one of our offices. So it was logistics. It was getting everybody organized to work from home, and just keeping in touch. And there was a point, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks into lockdown, where, I, as everybody had so much on their plate, so much on their plate. I decided that probably my time would be best spent just keeping in touch with people for a couple of weeks. And if that's all I could manage, if that's all I managed to fit in, as well as looking after the boys at home, my little ones were 6 and 8, then that was enough. And that was I'm really pleased I made that decision. It was important. Yes, there were parts of me that felt guilty because I had, lots of planning, lots of different things going on, and I had my own business as well, so I had all my own clients still there to look after. But I just adopted the keeping in touch approach, and we did use the furlough system. Absolutely. We used the furlough system on a rotation, so that we didn't ever have anybody from a particular area of the business out. We didn't have an empty desk as such. There was always someone for that area, and everybody was fantastic. They really understood. I think there were huge struggles in all sorts of ways, but I think transparency was really important, and we absolutely wore our heart on our sleeves and told the staff really everything we could financially, right from the inside. And we've always been very open and honest, and that that comes as a shock as well, doesn't it, to people? Because I think people think, oh my goodness, why are they telling us all this information? What's happening? But we just felt it was important to share it.
I feel like the pandemic almost made that okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of a sudden people were going, do you know what? Financially, I'm just struggling. Or being trying to be a teacher. Like all these parents suddenly trying to be teachers, like they've got a degree in teaching, was just, I as a non-parent, I watched on in horror because I felt like you were all putting so much pressure on yourself to be something you couldn't be because you don't have a degree in how to teach. Like, and suddenly and it was like, please stop trying to homeschool your children. Just, give him a pass. But it was, I think I think that eventually, sorry, was that?
I mean, we got to the point with our own children, where it was because we were balancing and spinning so much that we just decided to just love them and
and they needed.
Yeah, and have other people, help us with resources and go quite simple. And that wasn't because what school were providing wasn't appropriate. It just wasn't appropriate for us. Because I think, as we've said, everybody's gone through this whole process in completely different ways with completely different circumstances in our own eyes.
Yeah.
And schools have had a lot of criticism for the way they've handled this, and some have done very elaborate forms of homeschooling with virtual learning, etc. Other schools haven't, and I think there's a spectrum because we're all different and there are different needs. So it was.
Well, and there's different financially able schools as well because a lot would come down to that. And but I think the kids also went through such a shock, didn't they? Of like, whoa, hang on, where's my routine gone? Where are my friends? Where's my social? Where's my, and it would be interesting to see how the long-term impact of the whole not allowed to touch masks and all this kind of stuff.
So it sounds like, and maybe I'm reading implicitly, but it sounds like to kind of keep your mojo going during that time, you made some very specific choices about what you were going to put your energy and time into, and not probably get bogged down with the noise or things that just you couldn't really affect. And was that a gradual thing, or were you able to kind of identify that quite quickly?
Oh, I think it's trial and error, and I think it still is, Glenn. I think it's still it's still an ongoing thing. We're learning every day, aren't we? I think I learned quite quickly that the overwhelming clients with information and with offers of help was pointless, because I think and that's not a criticism for everything that was out there, because I know I've received some absolute gems of support and information from my networks. But I think it's very frustrating in recruitment or in our business when you put a lot of effort into perhaps sending something to your clients in the form of a mailer or maybe support through a webinar or a resource. You put everything into it, don't you, because it's all you can do, and then you get nothing in return, or you get lots of bounce back. And I think we saw that as an industry for a lot of months. And I think it's only now we're kind of realizing there's still a time and a place for these things, and it is really important to be objective. And sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you don't. I think conversations around that and a culture in your place of work of, okay, so let's try this, but let's try only this, and let's not hang all our sense of belonging on it. Let's be clear. Let's be clear that it's a tool that we're offering because we found it useful. And certainly my team have really been brilliant and very supportive about picking things that they're going to share. And me as kind of the person that heads up learning and development, we've chosen things that we're going to share that we found beneficial, because again, I think at the moment the kind of partnership element and sort of sharing your own experience is absolutely key. It's not the same out there, so we can't try and sell or offload even something for free that we haven't benefited from ourselves.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
I totally agree with the sharing of information, because I think certainly from an recruitment agency perspective, and being in-house myself, I saw a desire, an immediate need to try and fill the gap. In terms of, okay, so you're not recruiting, but we still want to remind you we're here. Come to this webinar, come to this, read this document, and you're like,
enough. He's overloaded so much, he's choking.
All right.
Oh, Glenn.
You're right. Anyone we can call.
He was that overloaded with information he couldn't speak.
I know.
I did that the other day in the middle of a keynote. It was so embarrassing. completely off like for 5 minutes. Yeah, it was gone. But, you know, because I was so excited talking, I got like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do, and I also worried from a business perspective. So, you know, for consultants that were doing that then gave away so much stuff, I was like, how are you going to come back from free? Because you're giving, everyone will just then expect it for free. Because unfortunately, that's how the world works as well. So
yeah, it's that overwhelm.
Huge balancing act.
Yeah, it's almost like you're giving away a power. I liken it, you know, to sort of chocolate coins or glitter or whatever you want. You know, if you're going to spread yourself and give something away, gosh, choose wisely where you're going to give it. Choose where you've already got a really good connection, and make it a trial. Make it so that you're getting some feedback, that you're getting some intelligence, that kind of thing, not just that kind of broadcast of oh, you know, this is a great resource, because it is a great resource. Of course it is, but if you haven't got a receptive audience, then that's not a part of it. Yeah.
Are you okay, Glenn?
I think I'm back now.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm back now. I was going to say, actually, probably one of the most interesting emails I got from an agency was a list of kind of virtual games that you could do with your team. So rather than bombard me with like loads of stuff, that they read the kind of time, the moment, and thought about just team connectivity. And they were like, do this, do this, do this. You'll have some good fun with your teammates.
Yes.
And that in itself made me remember them, as opposed to come to this webinar about the challenges of recruiting through COVID, which was just bombarded with that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
you're
and
right.
everyone was on video chats and exhausting themselves anyway. So it was like enough. I must admit, I love it when my coach was saying just sit back on video chats. Like the further back you are, the less exhausted you'll get, because you can see more body language.
That's
so
true.
it was just such a simple thing, because we all kind of go, oh, sorry, what? We like lean in when we should be going back. And
that is a really, I think that's a really good point. That distance that you creates interdependence. So, you know, you've got something that you've got to give to the other person, and they've got to give it back. And I think that's a great tip for interviews as well. You know, because let's face it, remote interviews can be really hard. And you've got to create
just on that. If you're remote, just on that, if you're remote interviewing, please have your camera on. You know, you wouldn't sit in an interview with a paper bag on your head. Just throwing that out there. Right. Yeah. There are hiring managers out there that are not turning their cameras on.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a fantastic Glassdoor review from somebody about that. And I insisted I have my camera on, but they had theirs off. Like, anyway. But the sit back, and actually Eva, who's in my mastermind pod, was saying she actually feels more relaxed and like she could breathe more, which goes back to your breathing exercise as well, because she's just sitting back like you would in an actual chair. You know, you wouldn't be like leaning in.
You're just not as tense. You're not as tense, are you? You're not as intense.
No. Apparently we watch ourselves as well, so we're much more conscious about, am I sitting right? How do I look? Is the hair okay? Whereas, you know, actually if we were sitting opposite each other, we wouldn't think about it. That's
why I asked you, will I actually see myself on this screen, or can we just turn it off totally? Because I quite like not seeing myself. I did a webinar last week for a group of colleagues through Teams, and there was quite a big group at the other end, and their tech failed at the last minute, which, you know, happens all the time. So I ended up doing this talk, this kind of interactive talk with people that I couldn't see. All I had in front of me was a screen. I had maybe one PowerPoint slide, but it just had introductory stuff on. So all I had for the whole hour was this camera. And do you know what? It was quite interesting. It was quite liberating. Quite a liberating experience. Yeah, giving them time to reflect on material. And I couldn't get any verbal feedback at all. I was just relying on the odd text message from the lady at the other end to say, yeah, you're still there, you're still on the screen, and you know, it was interesting.
I can find that. Yeah, I can find that really exhausting, which is why I often say no to webinars, unless it's literally I can see everyone's little faces, so I can see that they're reacting. Otherwise, I feel like I'm delivering to dead air, and I get quite exhausted. Funny, isn't it? We're all interesting characters. We're out of time. I feel like I could talk to you for the next hour. I told you it would go fast.
You did. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting like 5 months or whatever ridiculous amount of time it was since we first talked. I don't know why yours is extra long, but we do have a queue. We're literally booked out until next year. Next week, because it's actually the 5-year anniversary of the Social Recruiting Show. Dun, dun,
Wow.
dun. Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe. We're a bit erratic, but since Glenn has taken over as co-host, we've been very, very good. Plus, I think the pandemic really helped me to turn up every week as well, because I haven't been traveling. But Audrey Knight is joining because she's the original. She pitched the idea to me, actually. The social recruiting show would not exist without Audrey Knight. So Audrey's going to come and be our guest. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure that we'll fill 45 minutes quite easily. So that's what we're doing next week, celebrating that. Felicity, if people want to find you other than LinkedIn, is there an easier way? Have you website or?
Yeah, absolutely. Or I can. Yeah, you can find me at or my email address, whatever. And what would be best? What do you?
Well,
usually?
this is going out publicly, so whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, so you can get hold of me through our company website, which is on my LinkedIn profile, but it's edwardsandpearce.co.uk. Yeah, and I still have my personal website open at the moment as well, which is felicityking.co.uk. So there's a couple of ways to find me. Be a pleasure to share anything anybody might want.
Yeah,
that
was
cool.
amazing.
Been lovely to speak to you.
And you. Thank you.
Really cool to speak to you.
Thank you. No, amazing. Cool. I'm definitely doing the window breathing. I love that. Really easy. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your comments as ever. And we shall see you at exactly the same time next week, which is, of course, 3 p.m. UK time, Glenn, and 10 a.m. Eastern with the fabulous Audrey Knight. And thank you again, Felicity. Have a good weekend. Well, I'm going to say weekend, even though it's Thursday. Bye.